Okay. So, what I wanted to talk about today was how we deliver on our goals that we set ourselves, how to make sure it happens. And it could be anything. It could be a silly thing like I'm going to swim Windermere, or it could be I'm going to lose weight, or it could be I'm going to eat health. It could be anything. It could be any of those things. Um, and what I want to do is create a discussion about what might get in the way and how we move forwards.
Mhm.
But what I want to point to first of all is we're all creatures of habits. So if we have a habit of failing to do something, it's a habit. And therefore, we continue to fail to do something because our brain loves patterns, it loves simplicity, and it's really, really resistant to change. I'm not going to go into the biology because I know Catherine would challenge me on my biology and my understanding. But essentially, the brain is wired in such a way that the things that we do all of the time have much simpler connections. So it likes those. And when you try and change the connections, there's greater resistance to that. Literally, there's greater resistance to it. And we experience that as it being really difficult to do.
Mm.
So if we want to change the outcome, we have to address the habits. So first of all, in the habits, there's the thinking we have. And I want to point to the fact that every thought we have is just that. It's just a thought. Doesn't mean that that thought is true.
Does that mean when I say I don't fancy swimming because the sun's not out?
Yep,
How,
it
how
doesn't
do
mean
I
that's true.
overcome that one?
I'm not being drawn into this.
I think you just get bullied into that one.
Okay.
So it's also about the way we seek the evidence about our thinking about ourselves and our capacity to make those changes. And I call this belief binoculars. It's like we're wearing these binoculars that only allow us to see evidence that proves that we can't do something or proves something that we believe about ourselves is true. We don't actually see the rest of it. So we're all wearing belief binoculars. And yet there's a huge world out there beyond what our binoculars see. Then there's the self-talk, how we talk to ourselves. And I just want to pose a question. Would you say to others openly the sorts of things that you say about yourself to yourself? Just a
That,
thought.
that's the
Who
question
it
I always
is.
ask when someone says something that's derogatory about themselves. I'll say, would you say that to your best friend? I wonder where I got that one from.
I wonder where you did. Yes.
But it didn't
And
work
it's
when I
also,
used that on you, Jane, though.
yeah, absolutely. But it's also what we say in our heads.
Yeah.
It's the cycle of thinking in our own heads. We chastise ourselves, we give ourselves a hard time, and we use language we really wouldn't use on others. Not so negative. We wouldn't be so negative and so down on others. And yet we can be really down on ourselves.
Mm.
So we have to mind our language. And then there's this thing about the way we view the world. If we see the world as one way for us, guess what happens? The world goes, oh, yeah, if that's the way you see it, that's the way I'm going to prove it to be. If we change the way we see the world, remarkably, things change. So if we view the world as something that, say we view ourselves as being unable to lose weight, then we're not able to lose weight. It's just what happens. If we think we can't, we can't.
I
Full
think
stop.
it's also about priorities as well.
We're going
To
to
get
come to
into
that.
the right mindset.
The
Yeah.
competing priorities
Yeah.
and the reasons why and the reasons why not.
Yeah.
And our brain often comes up with a huge number of reasons why not. And then there's the really simple step, you'd think, wouldn't you? It's the actions we take. You'd think it would be really simple. This is what I want to achieve, so this is what I'm going to do. And yet what happens is we do everything else, anything else but the thing that we said we're going to do. We're doing that busily doing nothing, working the whole day through, as that Penguin advert song used to go. Brilliant advert. Busily doing nothing, working the whole day through, trying to find lots of things not to do. We do anything but the action that really we desire to happen. So I have some questions that I want you to talk about. You know how this goes.
Didn't tell me this.
You
This
know
was
how
Yeah,
this goes.
I'm not sure that I should have joined.
This
You've
was not
signed
the
up to
terms and
this.
conditions.
You've signed
No.
up to this already knowing how these things go. Yeah. So the overall question, not the question I want you to discuss, is really how often do you create an intention of achieving something but don't get there? Now, for all of us, I'm pretty certain that that's more than once. It's probably quite a few times. So I want you to sort of talk about what happens when you are successful in achieving the change you desire. So how do you feel and what are you saying to yourself? So if something goes well, you achieve what you wanted to achieve, what's the things you're doing in your head? What are you talking about? How does it feel?
For me, I resisted feeling this, or even looking over the cliff for a while as things started to get successful. You know that I did, right?
Mhm.
But because they became successful, I had no option but to look at it. And it felt incredible. I didn't think I was ready to have that level of joy. I talk about joy and smiles every day, and it's a daily thing that kind of lifts your vibration, whatever you want to call it, your energy to a different level. But that super, yeah, I've done this, I've achieved this. It genuinely, for me, it felt absolutely wonderful. But I was frightened in a sense to look at that in the same way that you're frightened to look at things that are really bad. There's a
Yeah.
mechanism that you're happy in, and over those two edges, I find that quite difficult.
And I think that's
I did.
speaking to this inner story you had about yourself
Is that
as well.
almost a bit of imposter syndrome? That you
Yeah.
don't think you're good enough to have achieved what you've achieved?
No, I just thought I would melt if I got that joyful and that happy.
Yeah.
That's all. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. Just like how would I even be in a world where everything went right? And it was almost as bad as how can I live in a world that is so sad without my dad, for example? Didn't know I
Yeah.
could even look at it. And if it was the same feeling on the opposite end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
just getting in there, and I was just I had no option but to look at it, and it was just magic. So that's my response to you. Is it?
And it's incredible, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
that so sometimes what stops us getting to that place is the fear of that. How would I feel? That's too scary for me to be successful. You know, to be successful beyond my, at least in my desires or beyond my desires, that's like I daren't speak that. I daren't see that because, oh my God, that's scary.
Can't even
But
look at
that's
it.
but
You don't know how
then
you're
there's
looking.
then there's the joy sometimes, isn't there, in the small things that we achieve that we want to achieve, and we'll allow that. What about you, Catherine? What's going on for you when you achieve something?
I think it gives me the impetus to carry on. I'm talking probably about weight loss now. Once you start seeing the numbers going in the right direction, then it's great. But it's just getting to that mindset where you're ready to make that commitment again.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're reminding me very much of. I once heard an elite sports person say this, and it really struck a chord with me, which is motivation follows action.
Yeah,
So many of us say we need motivation to start, but in truth, we get the motivation, as you're saying, when you see the outcomes of the action, more motivation comes.
yeah.
And that's such a brilliant thing. But for me, it's really interesting in terms of when I'm successful, it's like, yes, I've achieved it. And then I have this dialogue in my head that goes, but you knew you were going to do that anyway. So I almost undercut it and take it away. It's like I always believed I was going to get to the end of Windermere. I just didn't believe I was going to do it in time when I was really struggling with that. But there was never a doubt that I wouldn't get there. And so when I succeed, I just go, well, you knew that was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
You could have done better.
Yeah, me too.
It could have been faster. It could have been this. It could have been.
What's next?
Yeah, exactly.
Always
And
that
then there is the
mundane,
what's
isn't it?
next. Yeah,
That becomes mundane, and I stop myself thinking, none of this is mundane.
yeah.
It's really not. This is
And that's the key, isn't it?
yeah.
It's interesting that you say that I could have done better, I could have done faster, whatever, because I think that's something that resonates with me a lot. But
Yeah,
I put that down to being told when I had 99% on tests, oh, well, what was wrong with the other 1%? So I
Yeah.
think it is a childhood thing, and you have to say to yourself, no, actually, I did that quite well. Give myself a pat on the
Yeah.
back.
Well, it's like when I finished Ullswater that second time and I was down on myself.
You
And my
were,
husband
you
told
were
me off.
really down on
But
yourself.
I was rather cold. But my
Did you
husband
tell
told
her
me
off?
off. He said, "You've just swum 7.5 miles. You're not allowed to say it was rubbish."
That was better than I did. So I got in, I started, and I got
And-
out again.
And I wonder, this conversation that we're having now, I wonder how that's different when we don't succeed. So when we set off, when we start something and we don't achieve it, what's the dialogue then? So, for example, let's look at the weight loss one. You know, I'm going to lose weight. Oh, I haven't lost weight. Well, that's what always happens. That's where I might be. Or yeah, I could have done more training, but I never do. So that's okay. That's what always happens. You know, there's that comes up for me.
I think that's the kind of the easy and default option, isn't there? But I think it's almost like you can learn how to change those things by the other things that you've changed, can't you? So that you
That's
learn.
the idea. Very
Oh,
much so.
oh,
Yeah. You
that
know
sounds
what?
right.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm sort of pointing to for myself this year is if you can set a goal when you're 9 and achieve it when you're 59, that Windermere thing, when you
Yeah.
can keep that in mind and actually set about achieving it, and then you achieve it. And the mindset it takes to go through the difficult bits, to move through the pain, to move away from the I can't thoughts, that mindset, you can put that in any place. You've got that strength, you've got that way of thinking. You can bring that into business, you can bring that into other aspects of your life where you don't do that. So yeah, I'm leaning into that in a really big way.
I think it's harder to bring it into things that you've struggled with for a long time. I know that for me, when I'm trying to dig deep to complete long distances, it's almost like you have to get your head in the zone, but that's easier to do than, well, lose weight, which has been my lifelong struggle. So it's trying to get your head around it differently so that I'm not going to go on a calorie controlled diet, restrict my eating, get fed up with it, give up, and then put all the weight back on again. So it's just sort of trying to, I guess, break it down and get my head around sort of each piece of it, which is quite hard.
It also points to those patterns that we talked about earlier. The things that the brain has decided is the way it likes the thinking to go are the things that happen. And therefore, when we have this repeated pattern of trying and failing, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it is possible to break that cycle, and that's what we're really pointing to today. And I wonder in this conversation, those thoughts that you have when you're successful, those thoughts that you have when you're not so successful, which dialogue do you attach to being more about you? Which one holds your head most? Which one is the one, which dialogues, the positive or the negative, the success or the failure, which ones do you feel or not feel at all, because it might not be the way you see it, define you most? Or you in your head define yourself?
I think it's changing. Definitely when I wasn't so well in myself, it would have been all the negative self-talk. But now I think it is definitely changing. Specifically in my career, I always had to be perfect, but I'm realizing that actually I know quite a lot about what I do, and my 80% is probably just as good as someone else's 100%. So I think it really does depend on sort of what I'm thinking about.
So that's a really interesting one, because that's one of those beliefs that we can have about things that can really stop us in our tracks, which is if it's not perfect, it's not worth doing.
Well, I
Or if-
know I'm a perfectionist, but I've also, it's because of the industry I'm in, the data doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be fit for purpose. So
Yeah.
that's what I keep telling myself. So yeah.
And I know I've had a sort of dalliance with perfectionism, and I think you too as well, haven't you, Antonia? I've had a dalliance with perfectionism at times.
We squabble over this, don't we, a little bit?
We do, yes. It's the good enough is good enough, which you struggle with, yes.
Yeah.
In some things and not others.
And I think sometimes that the striving for perfectionism can lead to some pretty negative inner talk, self-talk, and the language we use with ourselves. And this is really where I'm pointing that when we have these high standards, that unless they are at those high standards, nothing is good enough. We can often set ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
And it's not about lowering the high standards, but about the way we talk to ourselves about that matters. Because I would never advocate for saying, oh, let's lower the standards. Because we want to be the best we can at all times. So why should we lower the standards?
I think the other thing is, though, the standards that we set sometimes are unachievable and they're unnecessary. So
yes, that's when we have to be really mindful about what it is. Yeah.
Do you think we set ourselves the standards to stop ourselves from doing things?
I think sometimes, yeah.
I think we can certainly stop ourselves by the way that we state what we want to do. And sometimes we can just scare ourselves. But there's this thing, isn't there, sometimes about, let's set this thing, but I know right from the start I can't get there. So we have these two dialogues going in our heads. That's what I'm going to achieve. And the other one going, yeah, no chance. And that can also be an issue. I certainly often find myself with contrasting conversations that I'm listening to in my head. One person saying one thing, one person saying another, and this conversation's going on. And it's like, oh, realizing that I don't actually have to take sides and I don't have to take either side is quite an interesting place to come from. So,
and I think that does vary as well, depending on how you're feeling within yourself as well, I think.
And this is where I said, and this is where it's really important to point to, you do the best you can at that time.
Yeah.
And that's where we can be kinder to ourselves.
And that was always
talk about we're coming from the best place we're being right now.
That was always my mantra to my children. All you can do is your best, because after all, that's all you can do. So, yeah.
But it's how we define what we mean by you can do your best, because we can also come a bit of a cropper when we define that in a way that's quite restricted. So yeah, that kind of leans into where we're going next. What stops you even starting on a goal or an achievement you want to create? What stops you even starting? What gets in the way of the first step? I'm the ultimate procrastinator. If I don't know instantly exactly how I can take the first step, I will avoid it.
Is that the perfectionism's sticking in there?
Not so much the perfectionism as the it's kind of like wanting things to be easier than they are. So if it feels like it's difficult, I don't start. And I've noticed about me that if something gives me an instant dopamine fix, so the response to the action I take has an instant feedback, I am far more likely to stick to that than if the reward is somewhere over here and some time off and harder to do. You know, it speaks to that ice pod thing that I've got outside. It gives me an instant dopamine hit. So it's much easier for me to go, oh, just go and get in the tub. Oh, yeah. Although on Friday, it didn't give me that. And so I didn't do it on Sunday. But I got in again this morning because it put me off because it didn't give me that same fix. I started again today and it did.
I think that's something that I challenged myself with, because before I would always put things off, that when I had like my to-do list, and I'd try and put things off that I thought were going to take a long time or require a lot of thought or something like that. But now I actually look at my schedule during the day and think, well, I know that I can think more in the morning once I've had my second coffee. So I'll schedule something like that for then. And then once you actually start it and you realise that it's not as difficult as you thought it was going to be, then you think, oh, well, why didn't I do that like last week? So I think
It's really interesting, because the minute you talk about scheduling or timetabling, I feel an incredible resistance in my body to the whole idea of having having that kind of routine. It's kind of like my body goes, what?
well, why do you think I don't like schedules and routine outside of work?
I wonder what comes up for you, Antonia. What stops you from moving
Used to
forwards?
For me, it used to be success used to stop it, I think. So what do you do once you've done that? What's next? It's always the what's next for me. But the conversation I would have with you now is very different to that I would have had with you 9 or 12 months ago, because there isn't almost, I haven't got time. I've just got so many things running different businesses to do that I don't have time to stop and think, don't want to do it, don't want to, just got to do it. There's no.
Yeah. And has your experience of success helped you overcome that fear of success?
Totally.
That's pretty awesome, isn't it? That when we experience these things, and this is what I noticed about myself, where I know what success feels like, and so I'm very specific, where I know that I can do something, I will do something that's similar to that, and I'll challenge myself again in that vein, and I'll go for it. Where I don't know what success feels like in that element of my life, there is a bit more of a resistance.
I think I've just moved genuinely, and I don't know how, thanks to you and other people, genuinely, I've sort of moved into a place where I just want more. It's like your ice bath. I just want more of it.
Just want more. It's recognizing that feeling. And I think that feedback, creating a feedback that goes, oh, I like this, can I have more of it, is a real motivator. And I know that about myself. I like this, I want more, give me more. How do I get more? Where do I find more? And when I've got that, then I can see, it's almost like I can see the point in the actions that are needed to be taken, and I can overcome any challenges that my brain might throw at me about that, because there's no hidden agenda of staying in the same track.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, isn't it?
The hidden agenda's gone. Yeah,
it has. And yeah, go on, keep going.
No, that's awesome. So
yeah, I've got to be able to say out loud, haven't I? And I feel a bit like, oh God, Antonia, doing that showing off. I'm not going to use language. That showing off again. But why? But that's okay, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not showing off, it's celebrating success.
Yeah.
As long as you don't get cocky with it, I think that's perfectly okay.
See, there's a judgment. There's a judgment call there. You're judging that somebody that
really
celebrates.
Arrogant, aren't they?
Okay. But judging somebody who celebrates success as cocky is probably what you're doing to yourself too. Because when we hold a judgment about somebody else, it's telling us where we hold a judgment about ourselves. It's telling us something about ourselves. It's not telling you about anybody else other than yourself. And this is something that I had to notice. You know, if I judge somebody for being something, oh, it's talking about me. So when we use language about success, you know,
odd, isn't it? Because
like if we start sort of berating somebody for creating a business that brings them millions, you know, then we kind of judge for how they've done it.
It's not perhaps success then, but just the way they present themselves.
It might be the personality that you're challenged by. But judging it as cocky, judging success, celebrating success as cocky is a judgment that you need to be mindful of, because it will affect where you view yourself and success.
It's hard to sing your own praises, I find, a lot.
It is, and it's one of those things that we struggle with, isn't it, continuously? It's one of the struggles that, you know, can I celebrate this? Can I, is it possible? The same with the safeguarding thing. Is it possible to do that in a joyful way? Is that allowable? Can I do that? We struggle with that phrase, didn't we? Dare I do this?
We do. And the thing is that the answer is yes. It's always yes. There's never a different answer. Can I celebrate this? Yes, of course you can. Can I do this joyfully? Yes, of course you can. It's a really interesting thing, because when we really look at it, it's possible to say yes to everything in that respect. But yet we judge ourselves for thinking that.
But like Catherine says, my posts on social media about my joy and the things that are going well tend to be quite muted, because whilst I'm feeling joy inside, I don't want to make anybody else feel that I'm showing off, or that anybody else's day has not been equally as successful as mine, no matter what they've done.
Do you know
And
what though?
It's really difficult carrying
one
on
of the-
that
one of the
inside, isn't
key-
it? You don't want to assess
Yeah.
anybody. You think, oh,
One of the key things, though, about pointing to joy is that no matter how difficult a day is, there will be moments of joy.
that is
And
absolutely.
and it's like I said about the goggles, when we search out joy and happiness in our life, we find it. When we search out misery and failure in our life, guess what? We find it. It just
It
depends on the
multiplies.
goggles that you're wearing.
Kind of multiplies, because the conversations that you and I were having 2 years ago were easily judged through a different lens than they are now. But finding literally struggle, sometimes it's a struggle. I sit there at 11 o'clock at night with my mum and the boys, and what did I find? What made me smile today? And those sometimes are the biggest ones. They're the nicest ones, where you've had to really think about it, because it's just been a
Absolutely.
fairly ordinary day, and you think, oh yeah, that one. And then
This is the thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Change your dynamic, I think, with the world.
I mean,
Yeah.
as a teacher, I used to talk to, or a head teacher, I used to talk to my staff about, we're so good as teachers at looking at what went wrong in a lesson, for example.
Yeah.
But let's look at what went right. What's been good today? What's been amazing today? What's just gone nicely and beautifully, and not, so looking at things and not using negative language, using positive language. So what are your competing commitments that sabotage your actions? And we've talked a little bit about hidden motivations. Things like, well, I don't want to go on a diet because the food I eat might be boring. Could be an example of a hidden motivation. We don't want to do something because we don't want to take the action that implies. And I think for me, I'm where you were. I don't want to take the action because what if I'm successful? Then what?
Beautiful.
It's terrifying, that idea of, well, what if it's successful? What if this brings in loads of money? Hell, that's terrifying. What would I do with loads of money?
Oh,
I'm sure you'd spend it.
Yeah, probably on swimming, but that's a different
Yeah,
matter.
probably.
You would let it do. You would allow it to let you do all of this more easily and more wouldn't you?
You say that, but there's this fear, because I think what sits there for me is that the more successful you get, the more risk there is of being found out. Do you know that
absolute drivel for you too? What absolute? Let me just put that on the table there. What nonsense!
I know, but it's that thing. It's that hidden thing that a lot of us can have, isn't it?
Well, objectively, it's nonsense.
And so many people say this to me. So many people say, and people can say whatever they like. When we have this inner dialogue, we filter it out. Oh, they're just saying it. They don't mean it. We do that sort of thing. That is how we show up for ourselves. So what about you, Catherine? What's your competing commitments to the things you want to achieve? In your head.
I think I put it down a lot to not having time. And, I've had this brainwave over Christmas that I'm going to start looking at what I'm eating and how I'm eating. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to meal prep. Have I done it? No. But yeah, that's.
So what's the risk of meal prepping? Because there'll be a risk to taking that action. And this is the interesting thing. That one about time is such a common one. And yet if we were to really, truly look at
time in, yeah. But if it was like a work thing, I would schedule it in and I'd do it. Whereas, after work, I think, oh.
Do you know what? I'm the exact opposite, though. Sort of the outside of work things, I can cope with a schedule. The inside of work things, please don't tie me down. I want to do what I feel like doing. And I'm really, that is really how my brain works at the moment.
I mean,
that's how we talk ourselves out of action, isn't it?
Yeah, I do have to try and switch things up work-wise. If I'm doing something that's quite repetitive, then I will look to do something else to break it up so that I can refocus and then go back to it an hour
And that
later.
goes back to, doesn't it, that sense of getting some sort of reward for our actions. So one of the things I've noticed is if you track something, like you were talking about food, the
Oh.
tracking of it can be a reward. And I don't mean tracking in detail the food that you're eating. You were talking about monitoring, when am I eating?
I know when my problem is. It's in the evenings, and I need
Okay.
to stop eating in the evenings. And
And
if
you
I
know
did
what,
that, I would
stating
be a lot
I
more
need to,
successful.
there's
I
something in
would
what you said.
like to.
It's not even that, because it's, you've used the word stop, and your brain will just say, I would like to eat in the evenings. That's what it will hear. I want to
Yeah.
eat in the evenings.
Yeah.
So it's about rethinking that. What are you going to be doing instead? Because
Drink
it's
water.
I need to get
How about
off the sugar wheel as well.
Drinking water. I'm going to drink water in the evening. There you go.
Oh,
I'm going to clean myself out. There you go.
drink water, maybe gin, but not water.
alcohol's just going to feed the sugar needs.
I know it is. Well, I don't drink very much anyway.
So what happens if you fail?
You learn from your mistakes and try again.
Or do we just carry on believing that we're always going to fail? Because what can happen is if we fail, we can then build this model that says there's no point in trying because I'm going to fail. Or we set off on doing something with the belief that we won't succeed, so we don't do it. And what really pointed me at this was going on a long walk with a friend who'd signed up for this event with me. And she's done lots of long distance walking before.
Oh.
And from the minute we set off, in her head was, I can't make this distance. I can't make this distance. Out of her head kept coming, I can't do this. I'm not fit enough. I'm not. And guess what happened? She didn't do it. She gave up. And it was all about the way she was talking to herself and the belief. Yet she's walked. She's done events that are 100 miles long. And this was 18. So there was
Right.
no sense in that conversation. It was just, that's how she set out on that walk. And she was walking slower and slower. I've been on lots of walks with her. I couldn't believe how slowly and how difficult it was for her to pick up one foot and put it in front of the other. And none of this, I'm not fit enough, I haven't trained enough, was actually true. What it was that's what she believed. And guess what her body did? Exactly what she believed.
Yeah.
Kind of one of those going on, because I'm thinking losing weight as well. Because we're none of us.
Join the club.
Yeah, we're all in it together. Mine is, and I know this is nonsense because I've done it before. If I lose weight, if I don't eat enough, or I don't eat these things over here, I will be too tired to do all of the stuff that I need to do over here. I will make
Yes.
myself poorly. And I know that's absolute nonsense, because I've never felt better than when I was doing all the stuff to lose the weight. And I was thinking, oh, a banana, that's better for, I'd much rather have a banana than I would have a bar of chocolate. But now, because I haven't done it for such a long time, my brain is like reprogrammed to go, and I don't eat Mars bars. Mars bar, that's what I need.
Yeah.
See,
I think that's the sugar fix, the sugar spike and the sugar crash. And that's what I have to do, is get myself through the first detox. It takes about 2 weeks. And then you start to be able to, you crave things like that less, and it becomes easier. So
It's interesting, isn't it? I agree. I think some of it is physical, but some of it is mental too. And it's really interesting because the other thing that I've seen people do is, make a statement, I'm not going to eat any biscuits, then have one biscuit and go, well, now I've had one, I might as well have the packet.
Well, I that is one of the things that I have to not have in the house: biscuits, crisps, because if I have one, then I normally end up.
Yeah, but there's something about the almost like, well, I failed now, so I might as well eat the whole lot. Do you know what I mean? It's like me saying to myself, well, I didn't get in the tub yesterday, so I might as well stop this idea of getting in the tub every day. It's the same thing.
It doesn't have to be every day. You could set yourself the goal of, I'm going to get in the tub 5 times a week, which would be
Yeah, but you could, but that's the intention is to get in cold water daily. That's the intention. Whether I achieve it or not is neither here nor there. In the sense, it's the getting in the tub daily becomes an intention, or getting in cold water daily becomes an intention, and therefore sometimes I meet that intention, sometimes I don't, but I don't lose the intention. And I think that's the point, isn't it? It's around, I'm not going to eat biscuits, could be the intention. But one day or one time you have a biscuit, you go, okay, I had a biscuit. I won't have a biscuit tomorrow, or I won't have a biscuit next,
I think
or I
it
won't eat another
depends.
biscuit.
I do have trigger foods that I know that if I have it outside of the house, it's fine. But if I have it in the house, then it's not fine. So I think there's some logic to that, but not completely.
Does anybody else lie to themselves? It's like, I'll just eat this. Nobody will know.
I used to.
I
Not now,
have
for a
done
long
before
time. Yeah.
when I've sat and ate a full pack of Kit Kats, but that's when I was struggling.
What
Yeah.
does you? Wow.
I
Kit
think,
Kat
you see, the thing is, for
Frankies,
me,
can't eat them.
I have a positive feedback here. I can't eat too much sugar without feeling sick. So therefore, that's quite a useful one, but I can eat a lot of other
I
things.
can eat plenty.
Yeah.
You know, they stop you coughing as well if you're coughing at night. Marvelous. Absolutely incredible. Much better than anything else. Just saying.
The thing is, isn't it, that we can get ourselves into this state where we can sabotage our intentions, and because we haven't acted, that feeds into that belief, well, I'm not going to be successful. So it feeds into hello mackerel. It feeds into all of these things that creates this self-fulfilling prophecy that we can't make that change that we want to change. So, and I think some of the time it's just about noticing. It's noticing this thing. What am I saying to myself? What's the hidden message that I'm trying to, that is behind all of this? What's the hidden belief? What's the hidden thing that actually I don't want to let go of this thing because I really like this thing over here? I mean, I'll give you an example for me in the business. I resisted everybody saying post on social media 3 times a week, do this, have this format, do this, that, and the other. And I was just refusing. Do it at this time, set time every day. I resisted all of that. Then I set an intention to show up daily on LinkedIn. So all my intention was show up daily on LinkedIn. And I literally write it when it comes to me. And if I've got to the end of the day and I haven't written anything, I'll go a bit like you with your moments of joy. Okay, right, what am I going to write about? And then I'll think about my day, and I'll scroll through any photographs I've taken, and it'll come from there.
That's where they come from, isn't it? The photograph.
Yeah, exactly. So I create an opportunity for inspiration if one hasn't come by the end of the day. But if one comes during the day, I'll write it then. And that took pressure off, because instead of not posting, being erratic, there's one day since I set this intention that I haven't shown up on LinkedIn. One day. And this is like 3 months.
Oh, okay.
So, but it was just changing the way I used the language with myself. You must do this. No, I'm going to set an intention. I intend to show up daily. Yeah. And there's something in the language, and there's something in the pressure that we can put on ourselves. This is why I was talking from the start about how do we talk to ourselves? Because that's usually what the problem is, where we talk to ourselves. So what happens when things don't according to plan? We've talked about that. We've talked about, are you kind to yourself? One of the things that I wanted to point to is when we're starting to do something new, we come against this resistance, which is called, the model is called the competency model, but we come against that. So right when we start something new, we don't know what we don't know. So we're quite happy. Oh, I'm going to do this. This will be fine. I'll be brilliant at it. Our experiences were brilliant. Other stuff will be brilliant at this. And then we start to realize there's a hell of a lot of stuff we don't know. And we start to go, I can't do that.
I'm facing that this week. Last week, I prepared to review some data that I haven't reviewed before, and it's more complicated than some of the other stuff that I know a lot about. And going through it today, and I thought, no, you're not going to give up. You're going to keep going. You're going to look at the training available. If you don't know, I reached out to someone and he didn't have a clue either. So I'm thinking, well, it's not just me. So what I'm going to do on Thursday, I think it's Thursday, I have a call with my clinical medical team. So I'm going to ask them. Okay, if I seem stupid, I seem stupid, because if I don't know, I don't know. And if I don't ask, I'm not going to find out the answers.
Exactly.
So,
and what I've had to remind myself is exactly this. Leadership and running schools and educating was like simple because I've been doing it for so long and
Yeah, I
developing
think,
and learning
yeah,
to be a leader. I'd learnt over time,
yeah,
but learning to be a businesswoman, this is new. And
yeah.
it's like, so I had all of this stuff in my head. I can't do this. I'll never show up like that. I'll never be able to do this. I'm not an entrepreneur. I can't, all that came in. And then I went, hang on a minute. You've just forgotten what it was like when you first started doing stuff.
And I think that's the thing. You get during your career, you get your experience and you move further up the chain, but you go into a specific sort of area. And then, like when I was doing more project management, to learn the project management skills, you did have to take time to step back and do some of the training courses, and that's okay.
But this is where we come up with one of the ways that can stop us in our tracks. This is one of the reasons we don't push forwards, because we're in that place where we don't know what we don't know. We don't know how to do it. And hell, that's scary. It can be really terrifying to be in a place of, I don't know. And at that point, we have to do what you were talking about. We have to seek support. We have to pretend that we have to put ourselves in a position where we go into it acting like we know what we do, not to anybody else, but to ourselves, because that cons the brain into becoming the consciously competent person.
I think for me, what also helps is the team that I'm working with know my worth from other things that I've done with them. So if I'm asking questions that seem a bit crazy, they know that that's not the whole of me. It's just because I don't understand this concept.
I love that, because that points directly to what I was talking to about learning from ourselves and our self-talk.
Yeah.
When we know we can achieve in one area, there's no reason at all why we can't achieve somewhere else.
And I think for me, it would be doing myself more of a disservice if I didn't admit that I don't know things. And I think that's okay to say you don't know everything.
But there are so many people who don't, who at this point, when they don't know something, believe that's because they're not any good at it.
I think a lot of people tend to bluff and then get found out. But I think 20 years ago, it would have been more difficult for me. But now it's like, okay,
But when we talk about the language that we use with ourselves, let's now look at this inwardly. If we're coming against a struggle, let's go back to the losing weight. If the conversation about losing weight turns back in on, you can't do this, and the self-talk. So we're trying something new. We're trying a new way of becoming healthy. And we start to realize that there's a struggle. It's not as easy as we thought it might be.
It's the frustration, but also when I did lose a lot of weight, I wasn't working because I was really quite unwell. So I had so much more time to commit to that. But I'm thinking that once Rob goes away...
There's a belief, though. There's a belief there, Catherine. There's a belief there that goes, when I wasn't working, I could lose weight. But when I am working, I can't lose weight.
Well, it was more difficult because I don't have the time. I think it's the time, but I'm going to have to cook for myself when Rob goes away sometimes a week. So I'm going to have to do more meal prepping.
But it does point to a belief. You see, this is the thing I said
Probably.
right at the start. The thought, what makes the thought that we have the truth? Nothing. It's just a thought. And if you can have any thought, if you can have that thought, you can have a different thought.
I need to prioritise meal prepping over you dragging me off swimming here, there and everywhere.
No, that's after your well-being. And so let's look at, do you believe that what you want to achieve is possible? There's a question mark over that for you, because you're saying, I don't believe I can lose weight when I'm working.
I have lost weight, so I know
when you're working. I specifically put that on the end. So there's your challenge. So that's not true.
What mean?
Sorry?
You're so mean.
That's mean. It's not mean. She said, I don't believe I can lose weight when I'm working. She said that.
I said it's a thought. Harder to. I didn't say I couldn't.
Yeah, but that's still a belief. Okay. It's much harder for me to do this because I'm working. Is an excuse not to do it.
Also, being bloody sick all the bloody time doesn't help either.
I think the bottom line is what we believe is what happens.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I'm pointing to.
Truly is.
So, truly is. What we believe is going to be the outcome will be the outcome.
Yeah.
So
it's
if we
true.
want to shift the outcome, we have to lose the beliefs that keep us stuck. That's what we have to lose. We have to throw them away. They are just thoughts. They don't have to be the truth. They aren't the truth. They're just
Change
thoughts.
our thoughts in a flash, can't we?
Yeah.
We just say,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, actually, this year I'm going to be magnetic to people and money, and I'm going to make everything work beautifully. And
Yeah.
actually keep thinking that and keep moving in that direction. It has changed the way, it has changed my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got people telling me, you know, what amazing stuff I can do. And so, you know, it's like, okay, they're telling me that. Let's believe it. You know,
Just
why
say it.
really am I not believing it? You know?
To say it.
Okay, well, I've already said in a different forum that I'm going to make £1 million as
Good for
a
you.
coach. So there you go.
Well, when you do, can you treat me to a swim holiday,
Yes,
please?
and I'll buy as a camper van as well.
Excellent. I'm in for that.
Can I not come?
Of course you can.
Oh, yeah, but
you
you'll
won't-
have to swim.
you can hold the towels.
Can I? Can I have the bacon sandwich, hold the towels?
Yeah,
Awesome.
you can. Yeah, there you go.
You can do the paddling.
We'll have our, no, we can have our uses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
But
don't
it is absolutely, if you believe something is possible for you, you can make it happen. If you believe it's not possible for you, or if you believe there are reasons why it's difficult for you, then those will be the things that get in the way. Full stop. The next thing is, are you taking consistent action? Are you showing up as the person who is the person who achieves the goal you want?
to. You have to.
You have to show up as that person.
Have to.
And you have to come from the place that you are that person who is the person who eats healthily, who are that
Oh.
person who is a millionaire.
It is hard, but if you can,
It is hard.
makes every bit of difference.
It's so consistency. Consistency doesn't mean every single day, every single moment. Consistency just means this is where you're coming from. And we're all human. So human floats. It doesn't stay
But-
exactly.
Do I need to tell myself I'm going to be a triathlete then?
I think for you it's about losing the what ifs.
Yeah.
Because the
probably.
what ifs are the things that get in the way. And then the thing is, so you've decided this is where you're coming from. You are this person. You're consistently showing up. And then for some reason that action doesn't happen. And that can be the biggest sabotage. So the question really is, do you trust yourself?
I think sometimes it's built on learned behavior, isn't it? So back on that sort of, it's almost like back on the circle. So if you've done it before and you've failed and you get back on, it's easier the next time, isn't it?
Mm.
Just do it.
I mean, I would
go again and go again and go again.
point to that very first conversation we had when you said, oh, leadership, don't want to be a leader.
It's not just go into my dirty laundry, shall we?
But it's that whole thing
Why
about
not? She's been in mine.
it's that whole thing about you changed your belief about yourself. You became a leader, and guess what? You're leading everywhere, and everybody's looking at you as an amazing leader.
And I'm loving it, and it's doing it your way.
Absolutely. And this is what I mean by pointing to it's about where you come from. Instead of I'm not a leader, it was I'm a leader and I'm pretty good at this. And that's what happens.
It just naturally happens, doesn't it, as you take those steps to the incremental steps that you need to take to get there.
But you take them from
showing
that
up.
standpoint of, I am this person.
Yeah, I want to be that person. I am that person. Yeah.
I am that. Essentially, if we come from a place where we're being the person we want to be, we become that person. It's almost, and this is that whole thing around solution-focused brief therapy. In solution-focused therapy or coaching, essentially somebody will say, "Oh, no, I want to be this person." You go, "So what would that feel like?" And they explore what that feels like, and all of a sudden they are that person. It's almost that magical. It's incredible. So the question is, where are you building trust in yourself to act on what you say you do? And there's a really simple strategy for this that I love, which is notice something that you want to change or want to do, declare to yourself that's going to happen, then do it. And when you've done it, notice that you've done it. You know, this is the thing, you know, it's very simple. So for example, it might be notice the washing up needs doing. Declare to yourself, I'm going to do the washing up. go and do the washing up, and then go, tick, I did the washing up. I said I was going to do it and I did it. It's this thing about the loop. Say you're going to do something, do it, close the loop. And the more times you close that loop, and keep it simple, but the more times you close that loop, the more trust you're going to build in the thing that you say to yourself. It's about honoring the word that your words. So one of the things that I've really sort of declared as the way I'm moving forward is being a person who lives in integrity, being a person who honors her word. And that doesn't mean doing exactly what I say. So let's say, for example, I said to Catherine, I'm going to meet you at 12 o'clock. And I noticed that actually I've not left home in time to be at 12 o'clock. So I would ring Catherine and say, look, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to be there for 12 o'clock, but I'm going to be there for 12:15. I know that's putting you out, but is that okay? I'm renegotiating the word. So I'm honoring my word. And I'm noticing I didn't meet it, but I'm honoring it.
At that one, haven't you?
Oh, I'm very good at honoring that one. Yes. Catherine's even better, but yes. But it's that thing, isn't it? It's about, we can be the person that honors our word. And somehow we want to be the person who honors the word, or is the word that we say to somebody else. But let's build trust in being that for ourselves.
I think sometimes, though, we set more store on things that impact other people than those that impact ourselves. And I think that's where some of my difficulty comes from.
Absolutely. We can all do that. And this is because we don't put ourselves, it goes back to
prioritize ourselves as,
yeah, it goes right back to what I said at the start about how do you talk to yourself? Where are you on your list of priorities? You know, in the same way as I said, would you say the things to others that you say to yourself? You know, why is it that you're at the bottom of your priority list? Because if you're not number one on your list, you're not showing up as best you can for other people. And this is the thing. And this is a really difficult thing for some of us to get, particularly females, actually, because of the way hormones work and conditioning works. But if we don't put ourselves at the top of the list, we're never putting anybody at the top of the list.
I think, yeah, certainly over the summer, that was true for myself. I was putting Emerson above my needs because at that point, they needed support more than I needed to support myself. But then, you know, I did redress that with taking the time out for the vacation. And yeah,
I think it's simpler than that, though. It's this idea that if we're not kind to ourselves, if we don't notice our needs, then we can't be the person we want to be for other people. And sometimes we overcommit ourselves. So we'll give our word to other people, we're going to do these things. And then and the whole time we're doing that, we know that we're going to struggle. And this is certainly what led to my burnout, you know. And what I've noticed is when we slow down and we think carefully about the things we're giving our energy to and we're giving our attention to, and the actions that we want to take and the way we want to move forwards, if we're really careful about that and we take it slowly and we think about where we sit in that, where that sits, it's much, much easier to be the person who lives in integrity and who honors their word. And therefore, it's also much, much easier to honor your word to yourself. Because when you set an intention for yourself, when you set something, a goal you want to achieve, when you set a person you want to be, it's much better than a goal you want to achieve. Because as Antonia said earlier, the what's next. You know, I sat having swum Windermere and gone, oh, that's been sitting there for 50 years. Now what am I going to do? Now what's my goal? You know?
You're still doing that.
So yeah, so there's this thing about be the person who does these things, be the person who shows up as in a certain way. So don't make it about a number. I'm trying to get the chat up. Don't make it about a number. Make it about who you are.
What's on chat?
Antonia's vision board. Yes. I appreciate that.
somebody else did just shout it out in a meeting last week. It was like, oh, thanks.
It is your vision board. It's your dream board, isn't it?
I'm just saying it is.
So's mine.
I'm there. Yours is lovely, by the way.
Yeah,
You're,
mine is our swim spot.
I like it.
Yeah. It's a winter sun evening, that one.
I can see myself having a cup of coffee and holding your coats.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thin.
But this is it. Okay. If you want to change the landscape so that anything is possible for you, because this is what we're talking about, it's that being in action, and it's about changing your trust of yourself. So start with the notice, declare, act immediately, recognize your action, and reward yourself. Remember what I said earlier about the dopamine fix. Acknowledging the action you've taken is a dopamine fix. Be in action on the intention. And I'm being really careful here about the word intention. I'm not using the word goal. I'm talking about intention. You know, I'm not talking about I'm going to achieve this. I'm saying I intend to be a millionaire coach, a six-figure coach. I intend that. So I'm coming from that place. You know, I know I can achieve that. I know I can achieve millionaire coach outcomes for my clients. That's where I'm coming from. So be in action on the intention daily. Who are you? In other words, what's the question? In these steps, who are you? Who are you being? Are you being the person that is eating healthily, or are you being the person who knows that eating healthily isn't going to work for them?
I think it's sometimes easier to see the end of the journey, isn't it? You can feel the steps feel much more manageable to get to that end goal if you kind of got, that's where I'm going to, that's who I am, that's what I'm doing. Those steps become so much more logical and evident.
It's almost imagining yourself as that person, isn't it?
Somebody said to me last week, and it was a really, really interesting exercise. Shut your eyes and think about what you're going to be in December 2025. Think of yourself as talking to somebody. I'm giving somebody secrets right here, coaching secrets.
It's all right. I've done exactly the same exercise with people, so it's not that secret.
Yeah, and think about talking to somebody, right? And just what would you say to them? What would that feel like? And what is it you would say to them? And that just made it so much more tangible for somebody like me, or somebody like many people, I guess. Just actually, that is something solid that you can work towards, rather than like an endless goal of like, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And I've got
and it's also about, so what are you doing? It's the question is, you are this person, you know, it's then, what are you doing? What are you doing daily? What actions are you taking? What are you eating?
They can become more solid and simple, I think, to take.
Well, but when you ask a question like, what are you eating? Say if it's about losing weight, for example, what are you eating? So, okay, I'm eating these things. You start to really try and imagine life as that person. That's really what we're talking about. And 12 months' time is easier than anything else.
I put my mum in charge of my diet. There we go.
Yeah, my husband does all the cooking, so that's my excuse. But
so, well, see, I've given her the responsibility. By 2025, 31st December, I will look like this. And if I don't, it's your fault. Go
Although
for it.
I would say blame's not a useful thing.
Oh no, it's
negative emotion, but yeah. So when we're talking about notice, declare, act immediately, be in action on the intention, track your actions, because this feeds the reward. And by track your actions, I don't mean like sort of keeping a spreadsheet. I just mean noticing your actions and going, oh, look, I said I was going to do this. I did it. It's that, isn't it? The other one is link new routines, new things you want to do to well-established old ones. It's called habit stacking. It's damn sight easier to do something at the same time as something that you've already done forever than it is to do it any other way.
I'll take your word on that.
It is. I mean, I only ever do physio when I brush my teeth because I can never remember to do it any other time, for example. Be honest and forgiving with yourself. Be honest and forgive yourself. So don't lie to yourself. Don't say it doesn't matter. But when things don't go according to plan, don't chastise yourself. Don't give yourself a half time. Don't give up. Just go, okay, tomorrow's a new day. Because that's the thing. The next minute is the next minute. It can all start again. It's not a problem. Mind your language to yourself. Be kind. You are human. You can do this. Check. is what you're saying really true? Or is it just a thought? And my challenge to you is whatever you think is just a thought, and therefore there's always a different thought to be had. Pay attention to what the hidden motivations are. What's getting in the way? What is it that really, I think, like in Catherine's case, you know, it's difficult for me to lose weight because I'm working.
It's boredom that gets in my way.
And boredom gets in my way too. Yeah. It's dopamine seeking that gets in my way. I just want dopamine. And if you do these things, you can redefine what's possible for you to the extent that literally the world is full of an infinite possibilities. You can choose and go wherever you like. Because it's possible. It's possible for you and it's possible for everybody else. So that's really key. Anything is possible.